He was known as the Man in Black, and his words shook the world. Behind the fame, though, Johnny Cash's life was full of heartache, loss, and dark secrets. His once bustling home is now empty, a haunting memory of the rough path he took. Cash left behind more than just music. He had 2 women, 5 children, and a tragic and famous love story. It's a story about fate and salvation. What he left behind may surprise you in the end. At around 2 a.m. on September 12, 2003, the famous country music star Johnny Cash died. He was 71 years old. His diabetes caused problems that led to his death at Baptist Hospital in Nashville, Tennessee. Cash had been having a lot of health problems in the months before he died, which made both his friends and his family very worried. His death marked the end of an age in country music and left a big hole in the hearts of music fans all over the world. It was only a few months before Johnny Cash's death. On May 15, 2003, his beloved wife June Carter Cash died. Johnny was deeply hurt by the death of June, the love of his life and his singing partner. A lot of people think that her death was a big reason why his health quickly got worse. They had been married for 35 years, and their love for each other was strong in both their personal lives and their music. Johnny turned to June for a lot of strength and support, and when she died, he was very sad. After she died, many people close to him said he seemed to lose the will to live, and in the months that followed, his health got worse quickly. One of the longest and most beautiful love stories in the music world was between the 2 people. When they met in the late 1950s, they hit it off right away. Johnny was already a rising star in the country music scene. In June, he found not only a singing partner, but also a soulmate who would help him get through some of the worst times in his life. June was part of the famous Carter family, who played a big role in the growth of country music. Her and Johnny's musical relationship led to many hits. Their most famous work together was the duet Jackson, which won them a Grammy Award in 1968. After June died, Johnny's health kept getting worse, which was made worse by the fact that he had a long past of abusing drugs and alcohol. His diabetes, which had been found years before, was one of the reasons why his health was getting worse. Several health problems, including trouble breathing and issues with his heart and kidneys, got worse in the months before he died. Even with all of these problems, Johnny remained a well-liked figure in the music world. He was admired for his ability to keep going even when things got hard, and for his commitment to his work. When Johnny died, his family, friends, and fans were sad about his death but also happy about his amazing impact. When Johnny died, his funeral was held at the First Baptist Church in Hendersonville, Tennessee, where he had lived for many years. The church, which is just outside of Nashville, was a fitting place for his funeral because it was an important part of his faith and life. Friends, family, and other artists paid their respects to the man whose music had touched the hearts of millions. It was a very emotional service. A lot of tributes were paid to Johnny at his funeral. Friends and fellow singers talked about how he changed the music world and their lives. People were moved to tears as they thought about his wide range of music, his unique voice, and his unwavering sense of what was real. Many well-known people from the country music scene were there to mourn, including Kris Kristofferson, Willie Nelson, and Waylon Jennings, who were close friends and worked with Johnny at different points in his career. He was buried next to his beloved wife June at Hendersonville Memory Gardens, which was close to their home in Hendersonville, Tennessee, after the service. The 2 important musicians were laid to rest in the cemetery, which was in a quiet and beautiful part of the state. Fans and supporters from all over the world quickly made their way to their grave site to pay their respects to the man who had made such an indelible mark on the music world. Now let's talk about Johnny Cash's personal life. His love life and marriage to Vivian Loberto had a big impact on his personal growth, which was linked to his rise to fame and ongoing battles with drug addiction. He met Vivian in 1951 while he was in basic training at an Air Force base in San Antonio, Texas. Training, there was an instant link between them when they met for the first time at a roller rink. Johnny became interested in Vivian Loberto, a 17-year-old Italian-American girl. Their relationship grew quickly, even though they lived far apart and faced many difficulties. They were dating for 3 weeks before Cash was sent to West Germany for 3 years of service. During their short but intense courtship, they wrote each other hundreds of letters that showed how deeply they felt about each other and how committed they were to each other. Johnny's letters to Vivian were full of love, and they were very important to both of them while they were apart. Their letters were full of longing and anticipation, but they were also close and honest, just like their friendship would be for years to come. They got married at St. Anne's Roman Catholic Church in San Antonio on August 7, 1954, just 1 month after Cash got out of the Air Force. It was a simple wedding. It looked like they would have a good life together after their wedding, and they settled into a pretty quiet neighborhood life. The couple had 4 girls over the next few years: Roseanne, Kathy, Cindy, and Tara. All of them became important in Johnny's life, but their relationship got worse over time. Early life in the family years were marked by Johnny's steady rise to fame. He spent a lot of time away from home as he toured the country and the world. Cash moved his family to a beautiful hilltop home with a view of Casita Springs, California, in 1961. This house would come to represent the Cash family's difficult life. Johnny had moved his parents to the area to run a small trailer park called the Johnny Cash Trailer Park. This park would become a part of his family's history. However, Cash's growing problems with drugs and alcohol were putting stress on his marriage to Vivian, even though things seemed safe at home. The stress of Johnny's job, his drug problems, and the fact that he was always on the road caused many arguments in his marriage. It got out of hand for him to drink, and he had several run-ins with the police. Cash's connection with Vivian was very difficult because of his crazy life and personal problems that were caused by his addiction. Johnny had a hard time being the husband and father he wanted to be because his personal life was all over the place and his work was growing quickly. Vivian finally lost it because she was getting more and more upset with Johnny's behavior. In 1966, she asked for a divorce because he was abusing alcohol and other drugs severely. He had been cheating on her many times, and he was becoming closer to singer June Carter, who would later become his second wife. June and Johnny had met years before, but their relationship got stronger in the mid-1960s. This caused a lot of trouble in Johnny's marriage to Vivian. Because of all of these things, they were no longer married, and the divorce was final in 1968. Vivian took care of Johnny Cash's 4 daughters after the divorce and made sure they were raised in a mostly stable setting. Cash had been an absentee father for most of his daughters' early years. He wasn't totally out of their lives, but his unstable behavior and ongoing drug problems made it hard for him to get along with them. Cash would eventually get back together with his girls in different ways, but the damage his troubled marriage and rough personal life years caused could not be easily fixed. One of the most famous and moving love stories in country music history is that of Johnny Cash and June Carter. They became friends after meeting for the first time backstage at the Grand Ole Opry in 1961. That year, Cash was already a growing star, and June was from the famous Carter family, which is one of the most important in country music history. But after years of working together and being friends, it wasn't until much later that their friendship turned into something more personal. When Cash and June first met, they became close friends, and June would often join Johnny on stage for his live shows. As the years went by, their bond grew stronger, and Johnny started to like June more and more. She became a constant in his life. Even though Johnny's personal life was unstable and he was still struggling with addiction, June was always there for him, both at work and in his personal life. As they played together, their musical friendship grew. One of their most famous songs is the duet Jackson, which they recorded together in 1967 and became one of their signature songs. 13 years after they first met in 1968, Johnny Cash finally asked June to marry him in a dramatic and memorable way. Cash, who had been having problems with his own feelings, finally got the courage to ask June to marry him during a live show in London, Ontario, where everyone was glued to their seats. The proposal happened at a time when both of them were having a hard time with the realities of their public lives. Johnny was fighting with addiction, and June was dealing with her own problems. Even so, it was clear that they loved each other, and their marriage would become one of the most famous and long, lasting in country music. Johnny and June got married in Franklin, Kentucky on March 1, 1968, in a small wedding. They started a new part of their lives together. There was a deep emotional and musical link between them, and they both loved making music that people could relate to. It was clear that the couple got along, and their performances together were charged with emotion, honesty, and electricity. Not only were they famous for how good they were at music, but also for how much they loved each other, which came through in every song they sang together. They had their only child together, a son named John Carter Cash, in 1970, just 2 years after getting married. John Carter, who was born on March 3, 1970, would become a well-known in the music business. Like his famous parents, he became Johnny and June's biological son and a symbol of their love and memory. Johnny and June's lives changed when John Carter was born. They became even more eager to raise their family while also juggling their busy jobs. Johnny became a father figure to June's 3 children, their son, Carlin, their daughter from a previous marriage, Rosie, and her daughter, Samantha. Rosie was June's daughter with Edwin Ripnix, who used to be a police officer, football player, and race car driver. Carlin was from her marriage to honky-tonk singer Carl Smith. Johnny loved being a stepfather and took on the role with warmth. He made the mixed family close and complicated at the same time. Over the course of their marriage, Johnny and June dealt with many problems, especially Johnny's ongoing drug problems. His fight with amphetamines and other drugs caused them a lot of stress all the time. June, on the other hand, was a reliable and honest partner who often did terrible things to help Johnny stay clean. Taking Johnny's drugs away from him was one of the most important ways June helped him. Several times June would find Johnny's pill stash, take the pills from him and flush them down the toilet, an act of love that was meant to help him break free from his addiction. June never gave up on Johnny, even though he kept going to rehab and still had problems with drugs. She was there for him when things were at their worst, giving him both mental and physical support. Their friendship was based on love and respect for each other, and June was always there to help Johnny through his problems. Even when it looked impossible, she did everything she could to keep him on track. Johnny eventually got better and returned to stability thanks in large part to her unwavering faith in him. Not only did Johnny have problems with drugs, but his busy traveling schedule, the stress of fame, and the demons he was fighting inside himself also hurt their relationship. Even though things were hard for them, Johnny and June stayed committed to each other, both emotionally and professionally. As time went on, they kept making music together, putting out records, playing live, and staying active in the country music scene. Sometimes things went well, and sometimes they didn't. But they stayed a singing and emotional powerhouse through it all, and their bond grew stronger over time. June Carter Cash died in May 2003, not long before Johnny Cash's own death. Johnny was devastated when she died. He had lost the love of his life and the person who helped him the most. Many people think that Johnny's deep grief over June's death was a major factor in his own physical and mental decline. When Johnny lost June, the pain was too much for him to handle. He was already dealing with his own health problems, such as diabetes and other issues. His sense of purpose seemed to fade after she died, and he told everyone that his music was the only thing that was keeping him alive. June's and Johnny Cash's trip seemed to come to an end when Cash died just 4 months after June's. When he died on September 12, 2003, he had just started to feel like the music he had made with June was the only thing that still made him feel good and gave him work. Many people have been inspired by the couple's lasting love, their shared musical heritage, and their dedication to each other. Their story is one of love, determination, and artistic genius. It has left an indelible mark on the world of music and on the hearts of those who were lucky enough to see them on their journey together. What does Johnny Cash leave behind when he dies? First, we'll look at your field, lake, front estate in Hendersonville, Tennessee. Johnny Cash lived with June Carter Cash in a large house in Hendersonville, Tennessee, from 1968 until his death in 2003. At 200 Cottle Drive, this 14,000 square foot house turned into more than just a home. It was where the famous country music pair lived, loved, and made music together. It was the heart of the Cash family and a reminder of their lasting legacy. The large land was on top of a hill and had stunning views of Old Hickory Lake. This is where Johnny and June raised their kids, had family and friends over, and lived a quiet, private life after years of touring and the stress of being famous. It was built in the late 1960s and showed how successful the couple was, as well as their desire for a place to hide away from the public eye. The home, which was in the quiet farmland just outside of Nashville, was the perfect place for the couple to get away from the busy music business and relax with each other. The house had a peaceful, almost remote feel to it because it was near Old Hickory Lake. They could still keep in touch with the music world because it was close enough to Nashville. Over the years, the mansion was not only the place where many family events and private moments took place, but it was also where Johnny and June hosted parties for friends and fellow artists. They would throw parties, play music, and show the people they cared about how much they loved what they did. Some of Johnny's most famous songs were written and inspired by his life and the things he did at this place. This is where he would go to get away from his problems and think about his love for June and the songs that made him feel better. The inside of the house was just as beautiful as the outside. The rooms were big and there was lots of natural light. The design was a mix of classic Southern style and personal touches that showed what Johnny and June liked. There were photos, relics from their music careers, and other personal things in their home that told the story of their lives together. June, who was known for being beautiful and friendly, brought her own style to the house, making it a warm and welcoming place for their kids and extended family. The Cash family name became linked to Johnny's songs and legacy over time. During the country star's busiest and most creative years, the house was the setting for many events in his life. After getting over his addiction and some personal problems, he kept working as a musician here. Here with June, he found peace in the last few years of his life. The couple's home stayed the same for them, even though their personal lives went up and down, and Johnny's health kept getting worse. Johnny kept living at the house after June died in May 2003, but the death of his wife hurt him a lot. Many people think that Johnny's sadness over her death and his worsening health sped up his own death later that same year. After June's death, Johnny continued to think about and grieve in the house, which was now a reminder of their love for each other and their lasting legacy. He passed away on September 12, 2003, not long after June had died. After Johnny passed away, the Cash estate was held for a while by his family, but around the middle of the 2000s, the land changed hands. In the end, the house was sold to Barry Gibb of the Bee Gees, who bought it in 2006. Like Cash, Gibb was a revered figure in the music business. He was best known for his work with the famous pop group the Bee Gees. When Gibbs bought the estate, the mansion was fixed up to keep its grandeur and maybe make it fit Gibbs' wants and way of life better. Sadly, the Cash family's favorite mansion was destroyed by fire in 2007 while it was being fixed up. Damage from the fire to the 14,000 square foot house is terrible. After Johnny and June's house was sold, many of their friends felt like they had lost an important part of their history. It had been more than just a house on the farm. It was a sign of how much they loved each other, how much they cared about their family and their place in music history. The fire was a stark reminder of how fragile even the most famous structures can be. It was especially sad for people who knew the Cash family and liked what they did for country music. Cinnamon Hill in Montego Bay, Jamaica, comes in second. For more than 40 years, Johnny Cash and June Carter Cash loved going to Cinnamon Hill, a historic 18th century plantation house near Montego Bay in Jamaica, to get away from the stress of their busy jobs. They found safety in the estate, which was surrounded by lush tropical gardens and rolling hills in the Jamaican countryside, a place where they could get away from everyone and enjoy life more slowly and peacefully. Here, away from the fame of country music, they could relax, think, and find comfort in each other's company. For Johnny and June, Cinnamon Hill was more than just a place to camp. It was a very private getaway where they could make memories they would always treasure away from the stressful demands of their public lives. The house, which had the unique architecture of an island, was a beautiful example of Jamaica's long colonial past. When it was built in the 1007, 1800s, Cinnamon Hill mixed native Caribbean style with a sense of European elegance. The farmhouse showed both the grandeur and simplicity of island life with its whitewashed walls, wide verandas, and large, open rooms. The natural beauty of the estate made it even more charming. The lush green fields around the estate blended perfectly with the views of the Caribbean Sea in the distance. The farm was a great place for the couple to get away because it had both historic buildings and beautiful tropical scenery. When Johnny and June went to Jamaica for the first time in the mid-1960s, they fell in love with the island's beauty and peace right away. Over the years, they went back several times, becoming more and more attached to the island's laid-back way of life and friendly people. The couple began to dream of having a house there, and when they bought Cinnamon Hill in 1973, their dream came true. The estate quickly became an important part of their lives because it gave them a place to get away from the stresses of fame, relax, and spend real time with each other. It gave them a place to think about their music, their personal problems, and their love for each other without having to deal with the outside world all the time. Over the years, Cinnamon Hill became a sign of the Cash family's ties to Jamaica and how much they loved the culture and natural beauty of the island. The couple often had family and friends over to their farm. Among their guests were musicians and people from the country music world. It was a great place to sit and think because the house had a peaceful atmosphere and beautiful views from the gardens outside. Johnny and June would often sit on the verandas for hours, look out at the Caribbean, and talk about their lives, music, and things they had done together. Cinnamon Hill was not only a place for them to relax, but it was also very important to their music. Johnny had a deeper link to Jamaica than just a love of the scenery. It had a lot to do with his songs as well. His stay on the island gave him ideas for several songs, which he recorded. The rhythms, culture, and peaceful mood of the island inspired him. Johnny connected with Jamaica's rich musical history, which includes reggae and ska. He also liked how the island's slow pace let him think about his own life in ways that were hard to do in the fast-paced music business. June's retreat at Cinnamon Hill gave her a break from the stress of being in the news, so she could focus on her family and her relationship with Johnny. She, too, found comfort in the island's natural beauty, and she often went gardening or just hung out in the fields that surrounded the house. The peaceful farm setting gave June a chance to recharge and find peace, especially in the years after Johnny's drug problems and the death of June's mother. The time the couple spent at Cinnamon Hill was very important for their healing, both individually and as a pair. The couple loved spending time with each other and with their family at the farm. The couple's children and June's daughters from her earlier marriages often went to Cinnamon Hill to make memories as a family. People from all over the world could get together at the house to enjoy the beauty and peace of the island. The Cash family would spend days running around the fields, swimming in the ocean, and enjoying the beautiful views. They felt safe and connected here, even though Johnny was having a lot of problems at work and in his personal life. The third one is Cash Hideaway Farm in Bon Aqua, Tennessee. At the start of the 1970s, Johnny Cash was at a turning point in his personal and business life. There were highs and lows in his career, which was marked by his rise to fame as a country music star, his battles with addiction, and his own personal problems. After finding out that his accountant had been mismanaging his money, Johnny looked for a new way to get away from the chaos of the music business and the stress of being in the public eye all the time. How to fix it came in the form of a 107-acre farm in Bon Aqua, Tennessee. This rural property would become not only a safe haven for Cash, but also a key spot for rest, creation, and inspiration. Cash had long wanted to own some land where he could get away from the stress of fame and live a simpler, more natural life. Cash was determined to take back control of his life after it became public that he had been mismanaging his money. He set his sights on a farm in Bon Aqua. The property was great for him because it was only an hour's drive from Nashville, not too far away to give you peace, but close enough to Nashville to keep you in touch with the music business. Cash, his wife June Carter Cash, and their children moved to the farm so that Johnny could focus on healing, rediscover his love of music, and get back in touch with the roots of his childhood. The farm, which was once known as Cash's hideout, became Johnny's safe place. He could leave the stress of recording, traveling, and keeping up his public image behind here and just enjoy the peace and quiet of country life. The property had a simple house, barns, and a lot of space for farming. It was in a beautiful part of Tennessee. The farm was very different from the crazy times he had been through as a child, and Cash found comfort in taking care of the land and working on the property. His connection to the land was like the honest and simple sound he was going for in his music, and the farm became an extension of his creative energy. During his time at Bon Aqua, Cash started to hold small, private concerts on the property. He invited fans, friends, and other musicians to hear his music in a more honest and personal setting. Cash could play for a small group of people at the farm, which was very different from the big shows he was known for because of its rustic charm and sense of closeness. These shows gave Cash a chance to get back in touch with his roots and share his songs in a real, unfiltered setting. The farm became an important part of his music because it gave him a place to think about, write down, and play music. The land also gave Johnny and June a chance to think about their own lives and gave them a sense of peace that was hard to find in their busy lives. On the Bon Aqua land, Cash would face many of the demons that had been following him throughout his career, such as his drug problems. He took care of his physical and mental health while he was on the farm. He often spent long hours by himself thinking about his life and his place in the world. June had always been there for Johnny as he got better, and she was by his side the whole time. The peace and quiet of their rural home helped him find security and strength. Johnny and June's home, Bon Aqua, was a safe place for them to be for many years, and it was an important part of their family life. They could focus on each other and their kids there, away from everything else going on in the world. However, after Johnny died in 2003, the farm became worse for wear. June finally moved out of the property because she was still very upset about the death of her husband. The farm, which had been a symbol of Cash's escape from the world, was ignored and mostly left empty. In the years after Cash's death, fans and music historians began to see how important the farm was, both as a place where Cash lived and as a place that is important to his memory. The Bon Aqua property, which was linked to his music, his personal problems, and his family life, became a big part of his story. It took a lot of work in 2015 to fix up the land and keep it safe for future generations. As a tribute to Johnny Cash's singing roots and his ties to the land, the farm was reopened as the Storytellers Museum and Cash Hideaway Farm. The Storytellers Museum, which is located on the restored farm, gives guests a personal, hands-on look into Cash's life on the farm and how he came up with his stories. The museum has a lot of items from Cash's long and successful career, such as photos, instruments, handwritten songs, and personal items that show how deeply he was connected to country music and to his life outside of music. The museum's displays show Cash's rise from being a poor child in rural Arkansas to becoming one of the most important people in the history of country music. Besides the museum, the property still has a lot of its unique features. The restored farmhouse has rustic features and personal touches that remind people of Cash's love for simple living and give them an idea of how he lived while he lived there. The scenery around them, with its rolling fields, forests, and quiet spots to think, is still a big part of the experience. People can enjoy the same peaceful views that Cash did while he was on the land. This will help them understand the setting that inspired a lot of his later music. Fourth, the California Ventura Ranch House, Johnny Cash's 5-bedroom ranch-style home in Southern California, close to the beautiful Ojai Valley, shows how much he valued privacy and how deeply he loved his music. In the early 1960s, he paid someone to build him a house that became an important part of his personal and creative life. It was a quiet place for him to get away from the chaos of his traveling schedule. Cash had a peaceful place to work on his songs, recharge, and think about his life and career. The house was in an area known for its natural beauty, calm surroundings, and closeness to Los Angeles. The house is built in the style of a standard California ranch home. It has a warm, country charm that would come to represent Cash. Although the house was on a big lot, it was designed to feel cozy and close, which reflected Cash's genuinely humble personality. There was plenty of room for Cash, his family, and friends who came to visit with 5 bedrooms, but the house's design was simple enough that it never felt showy. The low horizontal lines and large windows of ranch-style building made the house blend in perfectly with its surroundings, giving the owners stunning views of the mountains and valleys nearby. The inside of the house was just as simple, with warm wood tones, country furniture, and a friendly vibe. The wood-paneled studio, where Cash spent many hours writing music, was one of the most interesting things about the house. The studio was more than just a room for a man who was known for writing a lot of songs. It was a heaven for artists like Cash because it was a private, quiet place where he could write, play, and think about the songs that would become famous. Even though the studio was simple, it worked well and had enough room for Cash to write his songs and play his guitar and other instruments. Cash saw the studio as a place where he could use music to show how he felt, whether he was working on new songs or listening to old ones again. What made the studio so unique was that it still had some of its original parts, some of which are still there today. A wall-mounted turntable is one of these features. These were famous in the middle of the 20th century, especially for music lovers like Clive Cash. The turntable was more than just a useful piece of gear. It was an important part of Cash's singing life. In the comfort of his own home, he could listen to music, including his own, and get ideas from other artists during the process. The fact that Cash has a turntable in the studio shows how much he loves music in general, not just as a job, but as a lifelong hobby. The turntable is also a reminder of the time when Cash lived. At one point, vinyl records were the main way people listened to music, and putting one on was as much about the ceremony as it was about the sound. The intercom system, which is popular in mid-century modern homes and was meant to let people talk to each other from different rooms, was another unique feature of the house. The audio system was more than just a useful tool for money. He did it every day. He could stay in touch with his family and guests throughout the house thanks to the intercom. He could call June from the kitchen to the studio or let his friends and coworkers know when they were coming over. House of Cash in Hendersonville, Tennessee, comes in 6th. In 1970, Johnny Cash did something very important to honor and preserve his heritage. He turned a former dinner theater at 700 East Main Street in Nashville, Tennessee, into the House of Cash, which would become one of the most famous and personal places linked to his name. This one-of-a-kind building was both a museum about Cash's life and work, and the main office for his growing business empire. Cash's ambitious and deeply personal project to change the building gave him a chance to think about his rise to fame, his effect on country music, and his life's work, while also making the building a hub for his business dealings. The house on East Main Street used to be a dinner theater, which is a place where live entertainment and meals are usually served, but Cash thought it was the right spot to show off his career and keep his memorabilia. In many ways, it was a reasonable next step for Cash, whose fame as an entertainer had grown so much in the years before. By making the room into the House of Cash, Johnny Cash not only gave his fans a place to enjoy his music and achievements, but he also left behind a lasting memorial to his unique life. The House of Cash started out as an interesting mix of a normal museum and a busy business center. It was packed with an amazing assortment of items that told the story of Johnny Cash's long and eventful career. People could look at displays about his rise to fame, which included awards, gold records, stage clothes, photos, and other personal items that told the story of how he went from being poor in Arkansas to becoming one of the most famous people in country music history. It had a lot of valuable things like early records that were hard to find, handwritten lyrics, instruments that Cash had used throughout his career, and even his own clothes like the black suits he was famous for. The House of Cash was more than just a place to look at old things, but it was a spot where Johnny Cash fans could get a close look at his personal life and see how it connected with his music. The museum had in-depth displays about how some of his most famous songs and records were made, such as at Folsom Prison, San Quentin, and on The Johnny Cash Show, a TV show that brought Cash into people's living rooms across America. Fans could learn about his work with other artists, his battles with addiction, and his strong dedication to social justice issues, all of which were important parts of who he was as a man and as an artist. Along with being a museum, the House of Cash was also where Cash's growing business operations were based. Cash was famous for both his music and his business sense. He used the place as a home base to handle his business affairs, such as recording contracts, merchandise deals, and show tours. The business was more than just a place to remember and celebrate. It was a useful business place where Cash and his team could plan Cash's future projects and take care of his business matters. As time went on, the House of Cash became an important place for making and selling Johnny Cash branded goods like records, t-shirts, and other souvenirs. People from all over the world who liked country music and tourists came to the House of Cash a lot when it was a museum. A lot of people came from far and wide to see the man who helped make country music what it is today. And they got to see everything about his work and personal life. Cash's many loyal fans saw him not only as a musical legend, but also as a real person who had lived an amazing and relatable life, which helped the museum's success. But like many other parts of Cash's life, his life had to change. The House of Cash was a museum until the mid-1990s. That's when the country music business and the way fans connected with it started to change. It became less popular for people to visit museums and see standard displays as new media and digital activities became more popular. In addition, Cash's work had changed, and he was focusing more on his personal life and the last few years of his music career. Because of this, fewer and fewer people went to the House of Cash, and by the late 1990s, it was no longer possible to afford to keep it open as a museum. After it stopped being a museum, the House of Cash building was used as an office for a while. The museum's displays and artifacts were taken down or moved, and the building was turned into a more useful place. But the House of Cash's history went on, even though the building itself was used for something else. A great deal of the museum's items were either stored, sold, or given to other museums and owners. When the Johnny Cash Museum in Nashville opened in 2013, it took some of these things with it to honor the artist's life and work. Many of the things that used to be shown in the House of Cash would now have a fixed home in this new museum. The House of Cash is still an important part of Johnny Cash's work and legacy, even though it is no longer open. It was a spot where Cash fans could get to know him better and see the personal items and souvenirs that had helped him build his career. For Cash, the museum was also a big sign of his desire to tell everyone about his life. His decision to make a place for his life's work showed how much he cared about his fans and how powerful music could be as a way to tell a story. Many people were captivated by Cash's music, and those who were lucky enough to visit the House of Cash got a rare and personal look into his life. From the beginning of his career to the end, the House of Cash showed what Johnny Cash was really like as a person, a musician, and a myth. It also gave fans a chance to honor a musician hero who had done so much for music. The building is no longer a museum, but it is still an important part of the story of how Johnny Cash changed country music and American society. What do you believe about Cash? Please tell us what you think in the box below. We hope this video was helpful for you. Kindly click like, share, and subscribe. If you enjoy the video, glad you watched and see you in the next film. Thank you.